I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Planning and Stakeholders Relation Committee. Roll call. Other members of this committee, could you please identify yourselves?
Tom Burgunder.
Allie Doyle.
Other members of the board, could you please identify yourselves?
Lori Mizgorski.
Tia McClenny.
Jen Liptak.
Approval of the minutes. The minutes from thank you. Approval of the minutes. The minutes from January's meeting of this committee has been circulated. Unless there's anyone that has questions or corrections, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Resolutions. There are no resolutions being presented to the Planning and Stakeholders Committee today. However, we have a presentation. We will hear a presentation concerning the 2024 Annual Service Report. Amy Schumer, could you please present?
Thank you. Good morning, board members and everyone else. I'm Amy Silberman. I am the Chief Development Officer here at Pittsburgh Regional Transit. I have two presentations today, starting first with our annual service report. So this is our annual report that we put out every year. Those of you who are here in person should have a physical copy if you'd like to flip through as we go. I'm going to provide an overview of it. This is a recap of fiscal year 2024, which ran July 1, 2023 through June 30th of 2024. So just a reminder that this is capturing data that was about 6 or 7 months ago. So first, this report is based on the transit service standards, board adopted transit service standards that display how we should evaluate our services every year to ensure that we are providing a base level of service across all routes. That includes looking at things like ridership, looking at on-time performance, looking at crowding, looking at out of service, which was a newer service standard that we added a few years back with our operator shortage. It also looks at Title VI, which are some federal requirements. I'll talk about what those are when we get to that point. And then I already mentioned the fiscal year dates that this covers. So some major highlights from the report for this year. And I will go into a little bit more detail about each of these. But overall, approximately steady ridership with some caveats to be discussed on the next slide. A slight increase in service hours for the first time since the pandemic, which is exciting. A slight increase in our operational costs. Service that was impacted significantly in fiscal year 2024 by our bus operator shortage and rail operator shortage, and our continued successful effort in hiring operators to resolve that issue. An update to software that we use to report on our ridership, and then a ridership reduction on our 71 series bus routes that coincided with the major service changes that we put into place in the fall of 2023 to support the University Line Bus Rapid Transit project. Starting first with ridership, our ridership in FY24 totaled just over 33 million rides for the year. Our bus ridership declined by about 1%, and all other modes increased. Light rail up about 5%, the incline up about 60%. That's because of the prior fiscal year we'd had a long-term closure of the incline, and paratransit up 2%. The bus ridership decline of 1%, however, has a pretty big caveat in it. That is that we updated our software. They're called automatic passenger counters, or APCs, that are lasers on all the doors of all of our vehicles. They count passengers as they get on and off the buses. We changed the software that was used to report that ridership in the middle of FY24. The new software was about 7% lower than the old software was showing for our bus ridership, all else being equal. And our new software seems to be in more accurate accounting. We do audit with human beings on the vehicles, all of our ridership softwares, and our previous audits seem to be slightly less accurate than our new audits comparing this new software. So we believe the new software is a more accurate accounting. At some point in fiscal year 2022, we had an increase in ridership that was, we think, based on a software change that was sort of covered up by the fact that our ridership was changing so drastically post-pandemic. We were seeing ridership growth, but it was not quite as big in fiscal year 2022 as we thought it was at that point. So that does account for that bus ridership drop of 1% in FY24. However, our fare box revenue on bus was up 5%. So we think the real world number is somewhere in between those two things and is probably about neutral, maybe a slight increase in the real world, but it's a little bit hard for us to compare apples to apples because of the software change. Passengers per service hour, this is a basic level of efficiency that we measure how many people we're carrying per hour of service that we provide on the street. That did decline very slightly to about 23 passengers per hour of service on the street in FY24, again, due to that approximately steady ridership along with about a 5% growth in our operating costs. We also break down cost per passenger served by mode, so across all 4 of our modes. Of course, paratransit being our highest mode, that is usually a door-to-door, 1 to 2 person per trip type style of paratransit. So it is by definition not as cost efficient of a mode as our fixed route systems. Light rail was approximately steady with FY23 numbers. Bus was also fairly steady again with that steady ridership, a slight uptick. And then the incline costs went down again because we had a significant growth in ridership in the incline with it being open for much more of FY24 than FY23. On-time performance, we look at across paratransit, light rail, and bus. Paratransit is always well up into the upper 90s in its percentage, and it's measured differently. So it's not an area of concern that we look at. Light rail is also usually not an area of concern. Our light rail on-time performance did dip significantly in FY24. That is mostly related to the Plinth closure in downtown. That happened in April and May of last year. And so that really threw off, because it was not built into our schedules, that really threw off our rail on-time performance for those 2 months of the year. The rest of the months of FY24 were up near that 90% on-time performance. Bus on-time performance continues to be a struggle for us in many different ways. Construction projects and continued focus and emphasis here, especially in Allegheny County, on bridges and bridge maintenance and bridge repair has continued to lead to a lot of bridge closures, which really do impact our ability to continue running our routes on time when they happen unexpectedly. We do also have a software update that's happening right now that will help us much better be able to predict how to update our schedules as we move forward with better, more accurate information of how long those buses are really taking in the real world by hour of day to make sure we're scheduling appropriately. So this will continue to be a big area of focus for our scheduling and operations teams as we head through FY25. Crowding. Crowding is defined as having more people on a vehicle than there are seats. So having people standing. Which, of course, if we have too many people standing, not only is that potentially an uncomfortable situation for certain people, but it also could lead to people being passed up by a completely full vehicle. So we try to avoid this and measure it accordingly. Our crowding did increase very slightly in FY24 by 0.2%, up to 1.4% of total trips experiencing this crowding. So we do look at this by route and by time of day as a way to prioritize where and when we may add an extra trip on a route to make sure that we aren't leaving people behind and are providing as comfortable of a journey as possible. This was a much bigger problem pre-pandemic when we were above 3% of trips experiencing overcrowding. It does still exist mostly in the Oakland corridor on our 61 and 71 series routes, as well as a few other routes in the Oakland corridor and our East Busway P1 route. Out of service. So out of service, we pre-pandemic did not measure. It was not, we did measure it internally. We did not measure it externally. We did not put it in the annual service report. It was not really a problem that we experienced and dealt with the community. However, with our operator shortage post-pandemic, we did start publicly measuring that. We added it to the board adopted service standards to make sure we were looking at it very closely. And I'm happy to report we almost met our goal of 1.5% of trips being out of service in FY24. We are already well below that for FY25. So in our FY25 annual service report, we will no longer see this as something that is exceeding its, I'm not sure goal is the right word, but threshold that we try to stay under of 1.5%. And we may even be able to, the next time we come to the board to update the service standards, we may even be able to tighten that goal down lower than 1.5% to ensure that we're really ensuring that isn't a problem. That's, of course, very significant to the public when your bus or your train doesn't come, especially if you're on a route that doesn't come frequently. All right, I mentioned Title VI. So this annual service report does cover certain aspects of our service with regard to Title VI. Title VI is a federal program from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it is set up to ensure that we do not disproportionately provide services to minority race and ethnicity communities. As defined, we actually define all of our routes as a minority race or ethnicity route or a non-minority race and ethnicity route. And then it also requires that we look at the same thing for low income and non-low income routes that don't have quite the same protections that the minority ethnicity and race routes do. But we are required to look at both, and we are required to mitigate any impacts that we have on minority race and ethnicity routes. So we do look at for all of the metrics that I have already talked about here. We do have one significant finding in FY24, which is crowding. So our top 10 routes with crowding have not changed from FY23 to FY24, but did get a little bit worse on those top 10 routes. And all of those top 10 routes are minority race and ethnicity, and actually also low income routes. 9 of the 10 of them are Oakland routes, 61s and 71s, and a couple others, and also our P1 East Busway route. So those are routes we have always historically experienced the most crowding on. They are our most popular and most well-ridden routes. However, because of this finding, we have to take a very serious, and already are taking a very serious look at trip times and where exactly along these routes crowding is occurring. And we will be adding service as long as our operator levels continue to allow us to do so as we head through FY25 and into FY26 to make sure that we are mitigating this finding. And then an update on our major service changes in FY24. We had 5 major service changes in FY24. One was on our route P17, and that was a positive addition of service, so I'm not going to cover it here. It is covered in the report. But we did have 4 major service reductions in fiscal year 2024 that we short-turned 4 of our routes that used to come into downtown. They no longer come into downtown. They turn around in Oakland and head back out. And so I just wanted to report on how those routes are performing, especially with the fact that we had this change in ridership software, which has made it very difficult to report on exactly what the impact of these routes is. So our team has done an extensive amount of research along with our data analysis group to ensure that we are appropriately messaging what we believe those changes are, considering those other broader changes to the ridership reporting. So we had one 61 series route, the 61D, and 3 71 series routes, the A, C, and D, that were short-turned in October of 2023. On the 61 series routes, that was approximately a neutral service change. We actually had a slight service increase on the other 61s, along with that decrease on the 61D. So overall, the service hours on those 4 sort of sister routes, if you will, was neutral. And the estimated ridership impact from that change was approximately a drop of 2% in ridership. So it seems like most people were able to, if they were taking the 61D, take one of those other 3 61 series routes that are still coming downtown. On the 71 series routes, because 3 of the 4 routes were short-turned in Oakland, we actually had about a 25% reduction in service across those 4 sister routes and about an 11% drop in ridership as a result. So this is not unexpected. It is a little bit difficult for us to estimate ridership changes, but we did assume that we would at least lose a little bit of ridership with such a significant reduction in service. It seems that fewer people than we expected were able to shift to other routes that continue to have a one-seat ride to downtown from some of the areas along these 71 series routes. So our team is very seriously looking at how we can mitigate and adjust services, especially along the Center Avenue area in the east end of the city, to ensure that riders either know about or have additional options to get to downtown or back to the Center Ave area, the sort of a Shady Side, North Oakland area. To ensure that we are serving those riders. And then also the crowding continues to be a challenge on all 8 of these routes. The 71B route and the 61C route in particular experienced an uptick in crowding along with this service change. So again, looking very specifically at where and when we can add trips to these 2 corridors to ensure that we are not leaving anybody behind on an overcrowded bus. So looking ahead into FY25 and 26, I already mentioned that our out of service has been largely addressed, thanks very little to do with my group, but certainly to our HR and operations teams for onboarding and hiring and training so many new bus and rail operators. Over the last year, we have really been able to reduce that out of service to almost nothing as an average. Of course, we have days here and there where we have incidents or other things happening, but on average, we are much below that threshold of 1.5%. On-time performance for my group will be a key goal as we head here. Continues to be a goal every time we're looking at schedule changes, but really a key focus as we move into FY26. And then crowding, especially on the 71B, the 61C, and in general across those top 10 routes as it pertains to that Title VI finding. And then we also have several big projects that continue to move and advance forward that are very specifically targeting better service experiences across all of these metrics. So that includes our next transit downtown, updating all of the downtown bus routings, many of which have already happened, several more which are planned to happen this June. To ensure that we are prepared for the changes coming with our bus rapid transit project this summer. Our PRTX University Line Bus Rapid Transit Project, and which of course has an aim of improving reliability and consistency along that corridor. And then of course our bus line redesign project is looking at all of these things, very specifically on-time performance and service reliability as a key focus that came from the community out of that project, and ensuring that any changes to bus routes that we plan for as we move forward have enough running time in those schedules for our operators to meet those schedules and ensure that our customers have service that comes on time. So those are really the 3 projects that are focused specifically on service quality as we continue to move forward into getting closer to FY26 here.
Yes.
So I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Does any board members have any questions for Amy?
Yeah, I have a couple related to the Oakland corridor. Have you I've been on the street when buses have stopped and said we can't pick more people up because we're already full. So I mean that's a real situation. Have you been able to identify times of day when you tend to have more crowding than other times?
Yes. And so specific to the Oakland corridor, it is largely related with both shift and student start and end time. So we tend to see a morning rush and an evening rush. However, the evening rush hour, if you will, in Oakland is much longer than it is in the rest of the county. It starts around 2 p.m. and goes until something like 8 or 9 p.m. because of evening classes. So we can see trip by trip the trips that have overcrowding, and that is how we make decisions to add trips on these routes. We did add a few trips at the end of FY24 on the 71B route in the 7 a.m. hour because we were experiencing significant overcrowding in downtown for folks heading out to Oakland in the morning. We assume based on the time of day, mostly hospital shift workers who were really not able to get on buses. And that did seem to address that hour of the day for the 71B. But yes, we can get that granular about exactly where and exactly when and which trip we are seeing that overcrowding so that we can be very targeted with making sure that adding one bus trip is doing the most good possible.
Something occurred to me as I was sitting here, and maybe this is too off the wall, but you've got a lot of short trips that run from Taunton to Atwood and then back again. And they also go from further out into Oakland to Atwood, and then they turn around and go back out. Is it possible to put up additional buses with a different code that maybe increase the number of buses that travel from Atwood into Taunton to address some of this overcrowding?
Yes, so we are looking at all options right now with regard to where exactly that crowded space is and where best to try and address it. So we also have a future service change at some point of extending the P3 into downtown, which was part of the BRT service plan. We did not put that into effect last fall because of that operator shortage. So we could look at implementing that service change sooner than the completion of construction for the project. We likely will continue to look at adding more trips on the 71B to come all the way into town to address those. And then we have and we'll continue to look at other options for route variants where we have a route that may be different, longer or shorter than the rest of the routes. And so that's also something that our team is going to look at internally and try and find the most efficient way for us to add service. We're trying to be very judicious with any service additions right now and making sure they're as targeted as possible so that we're addressing that problem, but not creating additional inefficiencies elsewhere.
Okay, my final question is more of a global overall question, and that is, you obviously experienced crowding as a difference in crowding once you implemented these short bus routes. Have you seen trends in terms of how crowded or less crowded your buses are from then until now, because you've already tried to increase some service in those areas?
Yes. So the 71B morning crowding issues seem to have been mostly in the outbound direction, seem to have been mostly addressed by the trips that we added last spring. And we saw changes in which routes and where along the routes the rest of the 71 series and 61 series routes were experiencing that overcrowding. So we do have areas where those short turn routes did result in less crowding for folks headed outbound, say at the end of the day, because those shorter routes were empty when they started their trip rather than pulling people from downtown onto their trips first. But that crowding largely shifted then to those routes that do still come downtown, like the 61C. And so we do continue to experience some more crowding than we want to see on that route and the 71B.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Board
Uh,
members?
Hi, this is Bobby. Thanks for this presentation. I was curious just what plans or measures there were to recover ridership loss with some of the short turns, you know, whether it's connected to BRT implementation plans further on, you know, with those, especially with the crowding as well, they seem somewhat connected. So I'm just curious if there's a plan there.
Yeah, so the longer range, or maybe I'll say like mid to long-term range plan, is bus line redesign. We are ensuring that all of these findings are incorporated into the bus line redesign project planning for draft 2, so that we can ensure that we are supporting the riders on this corridor with any bus line redesign changes. And in the shorter term, we are continuing to look at things like adding trips to reduce overcrowding, or perhaps the potential of that P3 route extension happening sooner than the end of the project. That may be more resources than we are able to accommodate right now in terms of operators. So that's, you know, those types of things are things that our team is looking at. They're also looking at potential of additional educational campaigns to help ensure riders understand the routes that continue to bring them to downtown in a one-seat ride because especially on Center Avenue, we saw less people switch to routes like the 82 than we would have expected. And so we are having, internal discussions about the best way to help promote some of those services that are still there and are not overcrowded and do take people directly to downtown. So routes like the 82 or the 77, and then further up along the 71A route, certainly routes like the 88 or 87 as well, and 86.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
This is Member McClenny. I have a couple of questions. Like was somewhat mentioned, I am looking at the 61 series and the 71 series, given that they seem to have a lot of overcrowding. So I'm especially looking at that for the bus line redesign, but it sounds like y'all are implementing something going forward. The second question you may not have right away, but I know that we said the incline had a 60% rider increase. But it sounds like the spike was due to the resumption of regular service in fiscal year 24. Do you know how that 60% increase compares to ridership before regular service had been interrupted?
Off the top of my head, no, but this cost per mode should show us because the incline service never changes. It's always open for the same hours. So if we look at this chart, incline is the red. So it looked like in FY22 about $4 per trip, and FY24 about $6 per trip. So my guess is we had slight operational cost increases over those 2 years, as well as perhaps a slightly less ridership. We do still continue in FY24. In FY24, we did still have more closures of the incline than is typical because of the ongoing rehabilitation project. So that's not to say that it was 100% open in FY24 yet either, but I can get that information for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Amy, I have another unrelated question. Toward the end of last year, we approved a new partnership program, which implemented significantly reduced fares for certain segments of the population that use public transportation. Has that program started, and what kind of impact have you seen so far?
I'm not the best person to speak to that. Dominica, do you want to speak to the Partner Pass program at all and its beginning, or? One moment.
Hello, good morning. So the Partner Pass, we were bringing on a new person to administer that program. They have accepted the position and will be beginning soon. Also internally, we're working out like the final kinks with the contract and a few other administrative things. And so it should be starting soon, but just not yet.
All right. If there's
Okay,
not, yeah.
Is there any other questions? If not, thank you, Amy.
And I'm going to continue if that's
Yeah,
all right with you.
that's
All right.
right.
So last item, I think, or last presentation anyway for this committee is a quarterly update on our PRTX University Line Bus Rapid Transit project. So providing this update every 3 months just to ensure everyone is up to speed on where we are at. As a reminder, this project has 2 construction phases. Phase 1, which has been ongoing in downtown Pittsburgh, is currently wrapping up construction. And I'll give a couple more details on that on the next slide. And then phase 2, which is our Uptown and Oakland communities, just began construction last month. And again, I'll provide an update there. So this is a map on this slide that just shows you where phase 1 and phase 2 are. So again, phase 1 includes bus lanes and 5 stations in downtown Pittsburgh. And then phase 2 includes, I believe, 18 bus stations in the Uptown and Oakland communities along 5th and 4th avenues. This slide is showing our timeline for those 2 phases of construction and noting that we are just about at completion of phase 1 construction and just beginning phase 2 construction. Phase 2 construction is set to complete in 2027. So downtown details, we are, as of 2 days ago, I believe, installing our 5 BRT stations. So our first BRT station started to get installed on Tuesday. There's a picture of it on the slide. It's very exciting. It's at 5th Avenue at Ross Street. So if you walk or drive or bus by that area, feel free to take a look. That is going in, and then the other 4 will follow in bits and pieces as we work through some phasing here over the next 3 to 4 months. All 5 of them should be ready to go by the end of June so that we can open them and begin using them in service. The red bus lanes that will go past these stations on 5th Avenue, 6th Avenue, and Liberty Avenue in downtown will also get painted in this spring as the weather begins to break. Those will also go in phases, and therefore we'll have, of course, traffic impacts as we phase and work through closing some of those lanes for that red paint. And then our 4 bus routes serving the University line, the 61A, B, and C, and the 71B will formally have their schedules updated with our June service changes, which is June 22nd, to align with this new downtown routing and formally begin to use those BRT stations. So hopefully the next time I provide this quarterly update, we're getting ready to cut the ribbon on those. And that will conclude the downtown phase of construction. And then Uptown and Oakland, I mentioned we just began last month. Right now, crews are working in fairly small, tight zones in Uptown and Oakland, doing more investigatory work subsurface, ensuring utilities are where they were assumed to be with designs, and getting ready with some of that subsurface infrastructure. We will begin to see slightly longer zones of construction that will last a little bit longer as we head through into the warmer months here and crews really get going in earnest on that construction. Our communications team provides monthly updates and a newsletter on our website to give more detail, as this is often dictated both by our construction teams as well as the city of Pittsburgh and other construction that the city has going on. So things change relatively quickly, and we can't always see exactly where we're going to be weeks and weeks ahead. So we will continue to post those more immediate updates so that folks can stay in the loop on exactly what will be closed when. Of course, our teams do every thing that is required by the city to keep pedestrian pathways open and keep vehicle lanes open to ensure that people can still get around in these very, very busy streets of these 2 neighborhoods as we do that construction. And this slide, just a reminder of where to go to get in touch with the project. So it's rideprt.org/BRT. Or we have our newsletter that you can also find at that same site. And of course, you can call customer service or email the project team at brt@rideprt.org anytime. Happy to answer any questions on this project.
Is there any questions from the board members? If not, thank you,
Thank you.
Amy. That ends the agenda for our committee today. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Good morning and welcome to the Finance Committee for February 2025. First up, we have roll call. May all Finance Committee members identify yourselves.
Emma Schuker.
Okay, may all board members identify yourself.
Tom Bergender.
Stephanie Turner.
Tia McClenny.
Bobby,
Lori Mizgorski.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the approval of minutes for the January 23rd, 2025 Finance Committee meeting. Meeting minutes have been circulated to all board members. Barring no questions, may I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Second.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion approved. Up next, we have Dominica Brown joining us to discuss a proposed resolution to extend and amend the agreement for financial audit and pension plan audit services.
Thank you.
Here's another one. Give us 1 second, please.
Every meeting we have gremlins, don't we?
What nails can do. Okay. Good morning, Madam Chair, fellow committee and board members. My name is Dominica Brown, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer. This first resolution is to authorize services to provide financial audit and pension plan services. So back in 2020, an RFP was issued for those services, and Mayor Dussel was awarded the contract. The agreement included 3 years and with an initial not to exceed amount of $313,500 and 2 option years. To date, 1 option year has been exercised, and this resolution would authorize PRT to exercise the 2nd option year. This option year would increase the not to exceed amount from $426,000 to $512,450. Subject to any questions that committee members may have, I would respectfully request that the Finance Committee recommend this resolution to the full board for approval.
Any questions from committee or board members? Hearing none, may I get a motion to bring this to the full board?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion approved. Up next, we have the financial statements.
All righty, so this first slide is a review of our monthly passenger revenues. You'll see that increase in November and then a dip in December and January. That is primarily due to the universities not riding in between semesters. And so, revenue during that time period would be reduced a bit. For January, our revenues were about $100,000 below the budgeted amount. That is primarily due to lower than budgeted fares and access revenue. Expenses for January are $3.7 million lower than budgeted, and that is primarily due to lower wages and benefits and lower materials. Subsidies for January are about $15 million, $15.9 million below the budgeted amount. And that's primarily due to a timing difference with state operating funding, as well as a budget change where we added CRRSA funds, that $10 million CRRSA funds that we expended earlier in the year. Year to date for January, fares are about $1.4 million below budgeted. But total revenue is only about $100,000 below budgeted. And although fares are below budgeted for year to date in January, compared to 2024, fares are still about $500,000 above what we saw at this point last year. Expenses in January are $23.1 million below budgeted, and that is primarily due to, well, actually, every expense category is below budgeted. Subsidies in January, about $900,000 below budgeted, and that is due to lower invoicing of vehicle overhaul. For our operating reserves, the month of January was begun with $420.7 million in reserves. There were $34.8 million in cash inflows. Outflows were $43.1 million, and the month was ended of January, not December, was ended in with $412.4 million. Are there any questions?
Do any committee members or board members have questions? Okay, thank you, Dominica. Hearing none, that concludes the Finance Committee for February 2025. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting
Thank you.
adjourned.
We will now proceed with the Performance Oversight Committee. Hope I'm not interrupting anybody since I'm online. I can't see what's happening down there. I didn't know if someone was about to speak. So good morning, Madam Chair, board members, and everyone in attendance. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Performance Oversight Committee. Other members of this committee, could you please identify yourselves?
Lori Mizgorski,
Other board members, could you please identify yourselves?
Tom Bergender.
Emma Schuker.
Allie Doyle.
Jen Liptak.
Bobby Fan.
The minutes from the January meeting of this committee have been circulated. Unless anyone has any questions or corrections, I'll ask for a motion to approve those minutes. Do I have a motion?
so moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Our first proposed resolution awarding of the bids is for the approval of bid awards. Jeffrey Devlin, could you please report on this resolution?
Yes, good morning. I'm actually not going to report on this morning. My job today is to simply introduce our new Director of Procurement, Mr. Justin Cava. Justin joined PRT about 17 years ago, and he has actually been in procurement for 11 years now, serving in a variety of capacities from procurement specialist through manager. And he's been serving in an acting capacity for about the past 3 or 4 months. And we're glad that when we posted the position, he applied for it and has earned the right to now lead our procurement. He's actually doing some really good work. He's a very creative yet structured individual. He's bringing some organization to the procurement team that is sorely needed and appreciated. And it's not just from a leadership perspective, but the team itself is actually very excited to have Justin rising to the helm here. So with that, I will stand aside and Justin will present the awards. Thank you.
Welcome, Justin.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. And good morning, committee members. Again, my name is Justin Cava. My last 10 years, I was the manager of purchasing materials. I had the privilege of managing 7 wonderful buyers. We handled mainly all the supply chain functions and inventory, which I'm not handling this year. It's been handed off to the materials group. So good luck to them. It seems to be going pretty smoothly so far. I have 4 items today for your consideration. All bids were publicly advertised. Any business documents were distributed. Contracts to be awarded today are awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Bid number one is B24-12-104. This is for exhaust gas recirculation coolers, or EGR for short. These are Cummins engine components utilized in the maintenance repair of our PRT bus fleet, diesel only. 263 suppliers were notified of the bid opportunity. 2 suppliers accepted the invitation. 2 bids were received. Our recommendation is to award to Cummins Incorporated in the estimated amount of $352,000, $996.30. Contract duration will be over a 2-year period with no renewal options. Any questions on the EGR coolers? None? Okay. Bid number 2 is B24-12-103. This is refrigerants. This is the R407C type, which comes in 115-pound cylinders. This is used in the maintenance and repair of our PRT bus fleet. 423 suppliers were notified of the bid opportunity. 2 suppliers accepted the invitation. 2 bids were received. 1 bidder was found to be non-responsive in accordance with the specification as advertised. A recommendation that a contract be awarded to North American Refrigerants in the estimated amount of $205,730.10. This will be over a 2-year period with no renewal options. Any questions or concerns regarding the refrigerants? Okay. Bid number 3 is B24-12-102A. This is for remanufactured exchange fuel injectors. This is another Cummins engine component utilized in the maintenance and repair of PRT's bus fleet, again, diesel only. 247 suppliers were notified of the bid opportunity. 3 suppliers accepted the invitation. 3 bids were received. A recommendation that a contract be awarded to Colonial Equipment Company and the estimated amount of $2,295,328. This will be over a 2-year period with no renewal options. Any questions on the fuel injectors? Okay. Last one is a CoStarz agreement on the PA state schedule. For office supplies, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of General Services awarded an office supply contract to ODP, or Office Depot Business Solutions, for office supplies. PRT wishes to make purchases under the terms and conditions of that contract. The recommendation is that the cooperative be awarded under the same terms and conditions of the PA Department of General Services contract to Office Depot Business Solutions in the estimated amount of $900,000. Any questions on the office supplies contract? And it's not very exciting stuff, but. Okay, well, subject to any further questions, I respectfully request these bids to be taken to the full board for approval.
All right. Does any board member have any questions for Mr. Devlin or Mr. Cava? May I have a motion to advance this resolution to the full board?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next resolution is thank you.
You, Justin.
The next resolution is a request for authorization to enter into interagency cooperation agreement with the City of Pittsburgh for the Heron Avenue Stairway Project. Mike Cetra, could you kindly present this resolution?
Yes. Good morning, Acting Committee Chair McClenny, other committee members and board members. As noted, this resolution would authorize PRT to enter into an interagency cooperation agreement with the City of Pittsburgh for the Heron Avenue Station Project. As part of PRT's public transit system infrastructure, we own, operate, and maintain a bus station on the Martin Luther King Jr. East Busway known as Heron Station. The City of Pittsburgh owns, operates, and maintains a pedestrian stairway that spans from Hancock Street via Downing Street and ends at Heron Avenue, relatively close to the station. The city is proposing to slightly relocate and replace the existing stairway with a new pedestrian stairway that would provide a more direct pedestrian connection to Heron Station. Next slide, please. So this slide just shows the existing stairway, and basically it is facing away from Heron Station now. In order to complete the project, the city requires ongoing access and use of approximately 200 square feet of real property located within PRT's existing busway right-of-way, so that they can not only have a contractor complete the project, but then post-completion have be able to access and maintain the stairway for snow removal and ongoing maintenance, et cetera. Next slide, please. And this slide here just shows kind of an aerial view, but you can see the red area there is the 200 square feet in PRT's existing right away, where the stairway would be partially relocated into, then again will be facing towards the station. When this project, assuming board and city council approval for the agreement, is completed. I would also note this is replacing the stairway access only. Existing ADA access points, both the ones that PRT owns and maintains to Heron Station, and the city's existing ADA access via their street network via Heron Avenue and Dobson Street will remain in place as they are today. So with that information and subject to any questions that members may have, I would respectfully request that the committee recommend this resolution to the full board for approval.
Thank you. Does any board member have questions for Mr. Sutra? May I have a motion to advance this resolution to the full board?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next resolution is a request for authorization to award construction contract for the Castle Shannon Park and Ride Rehabilitation Project. Greg O'Hare, could you kindly present this resolution?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. So this resolution seeks authorization to award construction contract PNR 24-05 for the Castle Shannon Park and Ride Rehabilitation. The scope of work generally consists of asphalt paving, concrete sidewalk and curb, including ADA ramps, concrete islands, concrete light pole foundation repairs, stair repairs, light replacement, pavement markings, and temporary traffic control. The project duration is 200 calendar days from notice to proceed. The low responsive bidder is A. Marante Contracting Incorporated with a bid of $2,932,354.
Does any
So this-
board member?
Apologize. So this slide is 3 pictures on it to illustrate the project location, the project site, and the existing conditions of the park and ride. On the left-hand side is the project location map and aerial view depicting from downtown Pittsburgh to where the Castle Shannon Park and Ride is. The Castle Shannon Park and Ride is located where the yellow rectangle is at the bottom portion of the picture. The red line is the Red Line light rail service. The upper right-hand picture is a project site view with yellow shading bounding the project area. The large yellow area is the park and ride itself. The smaller yellow areas are areas of sidewalk replacement that are part of this particular project. And the bottom right-hand picture is a picture of the existing condition of the park and ride asphalt, which illustrates the poor condition of the existing asphalt and the need for rehabilitation. In this last slide for this resolution, there's 2 pictures here. In the upper left-hand corner, subset into the larger picture is an aerial view of the Castle Shannon Boulevard and Mount Lebanon Boulevard intersection where it's illustrated, and you can see there are existing pedestrian crosswalks to get to the park and ride. However, the yellow shading area is an area where there is actually no sidewalk connection to the crosswalks. So this project will also incorporate improving the accessible access to PRT Transit to our park and ride. And PRT will be installing sidewalks along Castle Shannon Boulevard to allow access to the park and ride. As of right now, if folks want to access the park and ride, the sidewalk just terminates and they have to literally walk in the dirt for about 50 to 100 feet to get to the intersection. So this project aims to make that improvement as well. Pending any questions, I respectfully request the committee move the resolution to the full board for consideration.
All right, thank you. Does any board member have questions for Mr. O'Hare? May I have a motion to advance this resolution to the full board?
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. O'Hare.
Thank you.
That's the end of the agenda for for this committee today. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.